Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Regardless of where you're at, I'm very happy that y'all are joining us for tonight's chat. My name is Dominique with the Mentor Me Collective, and we have a wonderful woman in the building that's going to give you more details into program management. But before I get there, I have a couple of announcements I want to share for anybody who's first time watching. So, welcome to our Encore series. It's a non-technical career series within tech companies. So, you have your product managers, your customer success, your program managers. We've done a lot of great things over the last few days. We had Isaiah Harbin on Monday. We have Mr. Morris today, and we have a great person for you today. So, welcome. So, I hope y'all all take a minute just to share this, tag people, share it on LinkedIn, share it on YouTube, share on your Twitter, your Instagrams, wherever you're good at, because we want to reach as big of an audience as we possibly can. And we're continuing events in July with some of the greatest Black technologists. And so before we get into the nitty gritty and the heavy, I would like to know, are y'all in school, boot camp, or self-learning? Are you applying for your first role? Or are you growing and glowing in your career? I'm just here to tell you, wherever you're at, we support you, we love you, we want to see you grow and do such a great job, because we know you all are more than capable. And so a couple of announcements here. At first, I want to start with our referral zone. That's right, guys. We have people from these companies like Boomi, Microsoft, Atlassian, Zillow, Netflix, Accenture, and many more. They are willing to give you referrals for the roles you see in these companies. And let's be real, the referrals help you get to these interviews where you can showcase not only who you are as a person, but all the skills you bring. So please take advantage of all of that, because we really want to help you all in the community achieve all these roles. And so you can sign up by going to bit.ly/MMC, that's refers. And once more, it's bit.ly/MMC refers. Again, this is all free of charge, and everything involved is just for you, the community. Oh, I love it. We have some people here. I'm just going to shout out a couple of people. We have NYC in the building. Shout out to you, Chanel. We have Tanae Collins in the greater Cleveland area. We have April Henry, who's in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have Lundra Robinson, my apologies, in Arkansas. And we have Yvonette Isme from South Florida. Thank you all for showing up. We really appreciate y'all. And of course, Dominique tuned in from the city of brotherly love. And so I just want to go through a couple of things before you get to the real show, because y'all didn't come to hear me talk. Y'all came to see our guests. So I want to take y'all to meeting in the team and perhaps join in our mentorship program, how to opt into our text reminders, visit in our Etsy shop, and finally, our Encore series giveaway. So at first, I want to introduce the team. Y'all know me. I'm Dominique Gabriel. I'm the strategy and business officer here at MMC. We have Chanel Power, who has done such a thank you, Chanel. Chanel Power has done such a great job of just not only organizing this, but really giving back to the community. She's a woman with just a heart of gold. We all love her. We have Ashley, who's our community impact coordinator, and Brianna, who's our social media strategist. But there's more. We have Sade, who does so much graphic design. She designs everything on our Etsy shop. Super dope woman. We got Dominique McCall. You saw her in the comments, from the city of brotherly love. She's a part of our user experience engineering team, along with Sharika. And finally, we have Diamond M, who's an operations engineer here. And all of them are such lovely women, such lovely ladies, and willing to do whatever for the community. We all love them here. Oh, let me go to that slide. If you'd like to join, please visit bit.ly/MMC-team and select the volunteer inquiry with me. Again, go to bit.ly/MMC-team and select the inquiry with me. I see you, Jay, from NYC. We always love the NYC folks here. So our mentorship program is launching. So we actually just launched our fellowship program for UX and UI designers and researchers that has gone live. And we have so many talented people here. And I cannot wait for y'all to see. It's in partnership with the Barron Review with Miro and Microsoft. We're super excited about this. And just in case you missed this program, don't worry, because guess what? We have another one coming in July, or not July rather, but spring of 2023. And you can opt into that, or sign up for it by going to bit.ly/MNC-mentee. And trust me, this is something I don't want to miss. This took a lot. We have so many community people who want to get involved, and it's so great to see. Now, I have to tell you some other exciting news. Are y'all ready for our free tech summit? That's right, the APEX Summit is coming this October. And so we really want to not only showcase all the Black technologists in the area, but also allow y'all to connect and grow not only your communities, but providing a bridge for the next generation to follow suit. Please, please, please sign up for this. We have so many people already here, and we want to see more. We want to see those numbers grow. And you can go and sign up for that by going to bit.ly/the Apex Summit. And just a couple of other details. It's happening in Atlanta. We expect about 1,000 plus attendees. And don't worry, if you can't come into Atlanta, we will have some virtual sessions for y'all to peek at as well. It's happening from October 5th through the 8th, and it's totally free. That's right. The only thing you need to get your tickets and your stay, because it's totally free. That's what we want to do for the community. And so these are the different type of audience we're catering to, whether you're a student, a contributor, or a leader. You have value, you have a lot to give to the world, and we want you to always make those connections and make yourself known. And the tickets will go live. Don't worry about when, we'll let y'all know beforehand. And again, you can register at bit.ly/the Apex Summit. So opting into our text reminders, very simple, y'all. We do not spam y'all. We do not expect y'all to, answer every text. This is strictly for when we have events like this and about our giveaways. You'll text MMC to 866-901-1914. Again, MMC to 866-901-1914. Remember I talked about Sade? That's right. She is the designer that does everything on our Etsy shop. She has done a lot from Black History Month to Women's History Month to Accessibility Month. Just a really dope designer. And you can see her creations on our Etsy shop. And you can view that by going to etsy.com/shop/MentorMe Collective. One more time, etsy.com/shop/MentorMe Collective. But what's an MMC event without an MMC giveaway? That's right. We always want y'all to come and learn something from this, but we like doing a little bit extra. So what we like to do is grab your pen and paper, take some notes, connect with us on social media platforms, and complete the quiz that will go out at the end of this series. And this is just a rehash. Really, I want y'all to focus on taking the notes to complete the quiz, visiting our social media and tagging 3 friends, and also text MMC to 866-901-1914. These are some of the prizes. We have Apple AirTags, we have a HomePod Mini, we have a hydrate water bottle, which I heard is fire, and we have some Nano Smart light bulbs. Nano Leaf Smart light bulbs. I'm reading too fast, guys. But again, y'all didn't come to hear me talk. Y'all came to see the lady of the hour. And so there was actually a person who gave me my very first referral when I was doing my career pivot. She's such a wonderful person, and I'm so excited that we can actually get her for this. So I want to introduce y'all to Miss Syndhia Javier.
Hi. I'm doing really, really great. Dominique, thank you for having me, the Mentor Me Collective. I'm really excited to be chatting with you all tonight, and just loving the energy already.
Oh, of course. So, guys, we're going to do this one a little different. This is going to be more of a fireside chat where we have a conversation. And she has a couple of slides she would like to show you all, but we want you to get really involved. So please feel free to ask questions at anytime during the chat. And look at Chanel showing support, looking gorgeous. Look at that. We love to see it.
Thank you, y'all. Thank you. Should I kick off my slides really quick?
Well, why don't you kick off your slide, but tell us a little bit about you.
Of course. So I've already got that embedded in the slides. So let's go ahead. Oh, y'all. You know what? I realized that it was my fault on technical difficulties, so we won't even do that. I'll talk to y'all today. My name is Syndhia Javier. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am really excited to be coming to talk to you from Harlem, New York tonight. I am the head of DEI programs at Handshake. Dominique and I had a chance to connect last week. This is a recent promo, so I am quite excited about it, and I do believe in giving ourselves our flowers and in giving each other our flowers. So that felt like a big deal for me. I've been at Handshake for about 8 months now, which is also really exciting. Before that, I spent about 6 months at a firm as a diversity and programs lead, and before that, I was at Lyft for about 2 years. So it's been a really nice and interesting journey in tech. I initially started off in tech actually as a university recruiter, and then was able to build out my project work and then program work. And I'll talk a little bit about how project management and program management are related in that pathway. But also we'll talk a bit about what it means to do this work in the DEI space, because I do think that there's a lot of considerations you need to give to that. But prior to coming to tech, I was actually in higher education for about 4.5 years. I've done a lot of career changes, mostly because I really do think that it's about finding the right space for you. We could dive into all that a little later.
Oh, I can't wait. So then, why don't we start with something easy, right? What is program management?
I love that question. Thank you so much. So when you think about program management, a couple of things to keep in mind are that programs are really a series of projects, right? So projects themselves are something that's being put into place to solve for a particular problem. And when you think projects in particular are usually short-term initiatives, things that are really solving for like a business need. For example, we need a project to figure out what does the overturning of Roe versus Wade mean for our health insurance, right? That's not necessarily something that we would think of a program for, because it's an immediate response, but it's work that needs to be done. It's conversations we need to have. And something that at Handshake I'm particularly proud of is we made sure that for our community, the healthcare that you signed up for is something that we are going to support in response to that being overturned. So it did require us quickly mobilizing to figure out from a leadership team down, how are we going to make sure that our insurance companies understand that wherever our team members are located, they have access to the same health insurance, that they know that we're in support of and advocating for them on their behalf. And if it's not accessible in their home state, that will how we will support in getting them to the services they need. So those are a project, or that's a project. It's a short-term deliverable. The Project Management Institute, because I did a little research for y'all, defines it as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. Okay. Once you understand a project, programs then are a series of those. So if all of those initiatives led to one area, let's say in the Roe versus Wade example, they'd probably ladder up to something like benefits. Well, then what are all the conversations, all of the projects that are coming out of benefits right now? And that's how you think about a program manager. In my world of DEI, some of the programs that I influence are our roadmap for leadership DEI conversations, as far as what is our leadership team's contribution to our DEI roadmap. Then I work with collaborators across the organization who have DEI initiatives, whether that's managers that are hiring for roles, chiefs of staff that are looking to make sure that their leaders are informed in DEI practices and initiatives, particular inclusive practices that managers want to put in place, or working with our communities, which are our ERG leads, to put on innovative and inclusive programming. That's how that DEI component gets intersected, or a bit of the framework of that DEI program management side.
Oh, wow. That's more intensive. So we did have a program manager in our last session with Tech Beach Business, and I think you kind of pulled up more on what she was speaking about, which was the difference between being a project manager, a product manager, and a program manager. Even though they all seem like they're similar, they're various different roles that are going on in there.
They definitely are. And I think that it's really important for folks to understand that project management is actually a really good pathway to program management. They are the other aspect that I would say was important in my career, is that project management can be a role, but it doesn't have to be, right? So you can apply skills of project management in different roles. I think that the way that came across for me was in university recruiting, for example. My project was to recruit HBCU students. So really figuring out what it took to do that. And I think that something like university recruiting really helped get a project mindset and skill set in place, so that program management felt a little bit more accessible. So for folks who are looking for program management, I think it's a really helpful pathway.
Very interesting. So then, the follow-up question to that is, can you walk us in the day of your life? Like, what do you see as a senior DEI program manager?
That's a great question. I think one of the most exciting things about doing DEI is no 2 days truly look the same. It's not the sort of space that I think is helpful for people who like routine, because right now everybody's talking about DEI, and it's the great part about it, right? You've got folks who are either curious about what you're doing, collaborators who you need to keep informed about what's happening, or projects you need to keep running in place, or things you want to do, right? Like, where do we want to be? Currently, we're working on an example for you today is I've had Wednesdays tend to be like really meeting intensive days where I'm really just touching base with people and understanding where they are in certain projects and how we can connect. I prefer to do work from a human space. I think it helps us ground DEI in the conversation. And so I think those check-ins are really important. I know that with the work home and virtual, it can get a little hard, but I have found that it's easier to like send a ping and a reminder to a friend than it is if we have to make this like a heavy experience. So I try to, not to say that you have to work with everyone that's your friend, but I do think it's important to just chat with folks and set a regular cadence of in a way that works best for you. I feel like I work best in conversation, right? I'm able to help you understand what my pressure points are, help you get unblocked, see if there's things we need to escalate or take to a different conversation. And I think clarify our expectations for our next meeting. So for that in particular, like a day like today is about 7 meetings. Not bad, but it's a full day.
I like how you casually say it's just 7 meetings. 7 meetings. Talking to 7 different people in a day is a lot. So I can only imagine 7 meetings with different people, and some of those meetings being, much larger than just, you and I having a conversation.
It can be, but I think it's also one of the fun points of this role, right? I can go from talking to an individual employee about how to have conversations if they feel a microaggression has happened in the meeting, right? And that is helpful. And it's helpful for me to understand not just that employee's experience, but who else is involved. Is this a manager's trend? How are these experiences contributing to our employees' experience of the organization, right? When you see someone happen, if you're from New York, you're familiar with like, if you see something, say something. But a part of that is that if you see something and don't say something, what does it do, right? The impacts for the city can be catastrophic, but for a team, it could also have that same impact. You see your manager call someone the wrong name and not fix it. Does that feel like the sort of manager that you want to talk about how you need accommodations or how you're grieving, how your your project timelines may need to adjust for your life? Those are actual work implications, right? They impact how our employees show up, how engaged they can be, and how connected they feel to the mission and to the team. So we can go from conversations like that to executive team conversations where we're deciding on things like, how do we define DEI for the company, right? Like, what's on the table for us when we're talking about equity? Does it specifically talk about like performance? Is it equitable access and just when you get here? Are we looking at equity internally? Like, does everybody get promoted at the same rate? If not, what are we doing for that? One of the things that I can share I've worked on at Handshake has actually been a sponsorship program for our engineers. And that was really intentionally like an equity program or project. So what that was solving for is to say, who are our leaders in engineering and what is our organization? And we're seeing that there's a clear gap between who is in our organization and who's leading it. So our sponsorship program was our opportunity to invest and say, these profiles, these individuals are underrepresented, and we believe that they need a voice on our team. So how do we invest and equitably understand? Let me clarify that. How do we invest understanding the inequities that are in the system that impact access to make sure that everyone can have access to these roles? So our sponsorship program specifically, it was a pilot program for Black, Latinx, and female engineers, because those are the profiles that we were missing in some of our executive teams. And it's one of our opportunities to enact an equity practice in an organization.
And that's mighty impressive. And I think you touched on the DEI portion of that, right? Because you're showing how to marry the two between, which is what program manager are you going, what specific initiatives and KPIs that you are trying to reach. And I love that you identify everything, you thoroughly went through everything, all the steps that you took to like ensure the success of this program.
Yep, but we also don't have to be that formal. So let me know if it's too much detail or if there are particular areas that you as the audience are more curious about and want to hear more.
Well, let me learn you something real quick. They're here to see you, so please go into much details as you want. We actually have a question from the MMC team, and I'm going to merge both of them because it's a two-parter. But one was, how did you build those leadership skills? And part two is, how did you build effective communication skills? Because this job seems very people-oriented.
I kind of think we sometimes make things a little bit harder than we need to. And specifically what I'm saying in that is effective communication skills. I think I used to get really caught up on what's the meaning of effective. And is it just transactional? Does it mean like I have to be formal and forced? And that wasn't necessarily the way that I like to work. I think effective communication is communication that is empathetic, that is clear, that is regular, and that is consistent, right? So, and I do start off with empathetic, right? I think that we're working a lot together. When it comes to DEI, a lot of things can come up. And if we don't center our human like experience, we can miss the forest for the trees, right? I tend to think a strength of a DEI program manager or a program manager in general is make sure that you're clear on what you're solving for, right? And that does require having a lot of empathy, because I've been in conversations with folks where we're launching an initiative, but let's be clear, we want to recruit more people from X background, but we're iterating on like a question on an application. And I don't know if that necessarily gets to our big goal. So it's the helpful, I think, approach from a program manager is to help the company understand what is your actual goal, what are the initiatives that you're getting there, and how do you measure your proximity to success from that. You can't do everything at once, but you can potentially say, this may not be the effort that gets us the biggest bang for our buck. If we can only do one thing to increase representation, what's that one thing? But going back to it, I think effective communication has been grounded on empathy, consistency, clarity. So for me, getting clear on what that individual's needs are. Who's your manager? What do you need? When do they want to know what's happening? When do you report out on these things? The more you can understand your collaborator and they can understand you, I think the more effective your approach could be. What I meant, though, when I said that we overthink it is, I know that for me, I always thought effective, like I said, had to be terse or feel forced. What I've loved about this role is I communicate in the way that I communicate all the time, right? Like I'm very much a New Yorker. You'll sometimes hear my new baby come. I adopted a dog this weekend, so she'll sometimes join the calls. And I think it is very much this approach of, this is the way that I do my best work. And I love that Handshake allows me to do that.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And that's amazing in itself. And I like how you said, just keeping it simple, because I think for us, for everything, we overthink so much, like, hey, is my work great? Is my, am I reaching the right audience? Am I communication well? When really, I think we're doing enough, and we have to trust that if we're not doing enough, somebody will let us know on how to be better at what we're trying to achieve. So really a nice collaborative effort.
I want to make sure I answered that first question too, though, because you asked me two of them.
Yeah, so I'll bring it back up. So one was, how did you build those leadership skills?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. I've had some incredible mentors that never had the official title of mentor. So I just want to make a call out that not all of your mentors will have that title. These folks happen to be either managers or folks in my chain or senior leaders who saw my work and just took an investment in me. I will be honest with you that it was helpful for me to connect with leaders of color or leaders who I had some commonality with, and they were key in helping me, giving me candid feedback around how I was being presented or how I was presenting, right? Like, was I stuttering? Was I hesitating? Was I a little bit too reserved with my suggestions? How you could be a little more assertive, which I think is a part of those leadership skills. And having those leaders who can just tell you a quick ping of, Girl, you don't have to say, may I, can I please? You are getting paid because they trust you. You are getting paid because you provide a service. So trust in that and contribute like meaningfully. I think that's all helps build out those leadership skills.
Oh, and I love that point about not every person or every mentor has that title, because I can think of people who have shaped me who I am, but they were never official mentors, but they gave me a lesson that I carry with me for the rest of my life. So anybody could be a mentor, and so to speak.
I think it's a huge part of it, yeah.
So Dami said, I love the emphasis on empathetic basis for the connection. So happy you touched on that. And Chanel actually said, I'd love to hear more about your journey into tech. Is this something you always knew you wanted to do when you were younger? Were you the friend that always advocated for others?
Chanel, I love that question. I didn't want to, I think DEI work, I didn't want to always do tech. I wanted to always innovate. I love spaces that are really creative. I love building things. Those are things that excite me. So, you know how some folks can come into a role and be like, okay, this is how the person before you did it. We're looking for like 10% better. That's never the roles that I've been in. It's always been, no one has ever done this role. You don't really know what success looks like. Do you want to do this? And that always lights me up. I think the opportunity to like identify success, like build things from scratch and figure out how they get incorporated in the organization is really exciting. And I just have thoroughly enjoyed it. When I will tell you that when I joined tech from being in higher education for about 4.5 years. And the reality is that higher education can sometimes be an industry that doesn't innovate quickly, right? It tends to be your same coursework. I mean, I think for a lot of us, we still went to like the registrar's office. Like it's an old industry, which also means that it can take time for things to change. Even though I was working in career services, I found like, we're not getting these kids interviews. Like we're not talking about the issues that are actually on the table. We're just doing like job fairs, and those are great, but that's not the way that everybody's finding work right now. It's also not speaking to where people are finding their passions when it comes to work. So I think in the transition to tech, it helped me get really clear on being in a space that I could create and innovate and also take risk. I will say on the flip side of that, that was terrifying because being in a space where you don't take risks or the risks are small to going full blown, it's a lot of it's scary, right? It's scary to think about, I'm going to fail. This may not work. And I think that the biggest suggestion I could say as far as the transition to tech, you'll hear a lot of leaders talk about fail fast. And this idea is something of, you want to make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to learn the lesson you need to as quickly as possible so that you can iterate. It's not about getting it perfect. It's about getting it done and seeing what you can learn so that you can move quicker next time, right? So for me, that meant that I didn't have to be as much of a perfectionist. I love my work. I love working for making tech a more equitable and diverse and representative space. And so it's easy for me to be a perfectionist, but there's a lot of work to do. And I don't think I need to tell everybody what some of the things in the industry are when it comes to tech. So it's helpful for me to understand, like, how can you get it to a good place, put it out there and get the information of what's working and what do we need to fix so we can at least have things in motion. When I was younger, was I the friend that advocated for others? I did want to be a lawyer for a long time. So maybe. I think so. I think I think I wanted to advocate for myself, if I was honest. I'm the daughter of 2 immigrants. I was the first to go to college. I was the first to graduate, first to get my master's. And I think when it came to DEI, it was like, dang, that's a lot. And I don't have to, I'm smart, but there were so many chances where I could have not made it, right? Like, Dominique, I think about our example, things like referrals in your own community, right? Like what it looks like to have people increase your access through their access at times for people of color, that's not as accessible, right? So I think this work really made it important for me to be the thing I needed growing up, and I think to continue to build that.
And you're serving the community well, because again, these referrals do matter a lot. Sometimes that's a difference from just your resume getting seen, because countless companies get hundreds of recs, but they trust their employees enough to see if you refer somebody, they'll at least look at it. So just being, taking this a step beyond and being a willing referral source, I think that's so important, and speaks to who you are, the character, and how important you take these initiatives to get more people of color into these spaces.
Absolutely.
So, Adrian Carter asked this question: how important is it to get a PMP license?
Adrian, that's an awesome question. I would say you're going to look at certifications and education if you can't get the experience directly. In my personal experience, I don't have a PMP license. I think that if project or program management is, I think PMP is specifically project, your road, and you're not necessarily in the industry or can gain that skill set, it's a really helpful way for a recruiter to evaluate your interests and to see where you fit. It's a helpful way to transition in skills. But if you're in an industry and if you have been able to manage projects and can frame and portray that story in your resume well, I don't think you need it, because they can also be kind of expensive. For me, the example I was going to share is, while I wasn't in technology, that did work against me, I think, in pivoting industries, but I had a degree that I didn't tell y'all. I have my bachelor's in sociology and anthropology with a minor in African American studies, and then I got my master's in social organizational psychology. That master's, I got it while at Columbia, and I think that while I was there and able to talk about my project management, it was my ability to also have industry knowledge that allowed me to make that transition. So all that to say, a license is valuable if you want to make a career transition and you don't feel like you have the skill set. If not, I think that there are other ways that you can gain it, even free ways.
And that kind of segues into Adrian's next question, which is, what are good entry level positions to apply for to get into this role?
Awesome. I think you're going to look at entry level roles are going to have titles like operations analyst, a little bit more junior. And while that doesn't seem to be directly tied to project management, the signal or the path that you would be following is operations and analyst roles tend to be really specific on a detail focused nature, right? So if you think about, remember we talked about the program management being a series of projects, the project being focused on a deliverable. The analyst or the ops or the coordinator is the person who has to be the most like in the details, right? What needs to happen today? Who needs an email, right? Like, what data am I tracking? So that person having that kind of ground level introduction is then able to say, I understand the project, and grow for that role. And then from those projects, apply that skill to the programs, right? And even if it's not that direct program, the good thing about that skill set is you could do that in sales, right? But if you have that skill set, then you can say, I've done project management. How do I do that in design? How do I do that in another function versus being limited to that one? Let me know if that makes sense. That was an awesome question.
No, that was a good answer, and I love how everything kind of segues into itself, because Syndhia Collins says, I'm pivoting elsewhere, but feel project and program management concepts and initiatives are important to learn in all roles. So I'm honestly here to listen.
I love it. I think they are. I think, if I'm honest with y'all, I'm not a project manager. Like, my life does not read like a project or a program manager. I'm not the most organized. I'm much more of an arts person in my head. But I think that what project management and this sort of work has helped me get clear. I've gotten really clear on like effective like actions, right? From point A to point B, the shortest space is a line. What's the line that we need to do as a program, right? What is the line that we need to do as a business? I think that helps you be an effective program manager. It's helped me in my life to figure out like, okay, girl, don't go all around the way. Like, what are we doing today? And that's actually helped a lot. I think that those needs come up in different ways, and you kind of don't know you need it until you're in the space and you're there.
And I love that because you talked a little about yourself. I think everyone has an idea what the ideal person for each position, like this is what a CEO looks like, this is what a program manager should look like, this is what a project manager should look like. And you're like, hey, I don't fit the traditional mold, but I'm here. I found my way in, so you can find your way in as well. And you're doing an amazing job of that.
Thanks. I'm trying. Y'all, I think project management and program management is a really great space. It's not, let me be honest with you, there are some downsides. You have to be the person that holds the truth, right? Like you've got to be the person who sets out the plan. Something that you should look up if you haven't is things like, oh my God, I'm blanking on it. Why am I am so sorry, y'all. It's there's a couple of different versions or frameworks, but it's basically like who's directly responsible for this project, who's being consulted. A RACI, y'all. I'm so sorry. A RACI is a framework that allows you to identify who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and then who's informed. RACI, right? Project management and program management is huge for that because you're drawing the roadmap, right? We're saying, here's the problem statement, here's what we think might work, and here's how we're going to get there. But you also have to be able to respond and say, here's how we tried, right? Here are the things we put in place. In being able to do that, I think it helps you be able to show how you contributed to the path, but also show your employer like what you've tried, like bring them along on the journey. Yes, Chanel, thank you. RACI.
Very good comment. So, and Jay Sackett actually asked, how can you grow your technical skills as a program manager? And I think that'll speak to RACI a little bit.
RACI is a good one. I found myself I do think that once you're in this space, you become a little bit of a organizational nerd. So I spend a lot of time looking at platforms. I'm currently using Asana. I think it's helpful when you have collaborative efforts, maybe span across different teams or have to have company visibility. Monday, I've heard amazing things about, but I haven't gotten into it. A good old Google spreadsheet. I know that some companies are not a fan of it, but I do think it's helpful to figure out the ways that you work and what makes sense to how you organize the many projects you're a part of. So that could be helpful. I think the biggest thing you should keep in mind there is who needs to have access to the information and how you can make sure that your information is laid out in a digestible way, right? When I'm building a spreadsheet, ooh, sorry.
You're in there.
When I'm building a spreadsheet, I try to think about what I need to do, and then also what are the questions I'm going to get asked from my manager, and what are the questions she's going to get asked from hers on this. If I can quickly set up some sheets that get me that data point, how many people are involved, how many applied, where are we in the status, it helps me make sure that I'm able to get those updates as frequently as possible. Those, I think, are the technical skills that I need. I have found that my technical skills are not mathematics and they're not like in solving for formulas. And I think it's really important to know what your strengths are and what they're not. I tend to work with folks who are like, hey, what is the percentage change? You could find that. That's not my skill set. I could probably Google it, but I think it's also important to trust that you can find people in your organization who can do some of the hard skills that you can't do. I would argue that there aren't too many hard skills for PMing. You got to be organized. You got to have good communication. I think the intersection between PM and DEI that I always love is you got to think about what questions are we not asking? Who's not included in this conversation? And I think that's why the DEI program management actually works, because if I'm putting up a program like our sponsorship program, I have to also ask questions like, well, why did we do sponsorship and not mentorship? What are we hoping to see from sponsorship that we wouldn't see from mentorship? How would we know that we're successful from that, right? Same with like who benefits from this, right? Who do we have programs for? How do we know that we need programs for them? When will we see changes in things like our demographics or our representation? If we're not seeing changes, what are the problems that we still need to like solve for? So it's, I think, helpful. Both bodies of work, I think, complement each other. to get to some of those hard skills. But if there's specific hard skills that you want to ask about, let me know.
So I hope that y'all are asking questions. But again, she's the one with the knowledge. Before we get to the next question, I want you to see this comment. Lavetra Stevenson says, "You're telling my business with this career trajectory, want to be a lawyer to higher ed."
It was a lot. Before that, it was a marine biologist. I feel like my childhood was exhausting. But honestly, it was I don't think we talk a lot about the lattice structure of careers. But what I'm trying to say is this. I think be open to what your experiences are offering you in each moment. I started my first job after college was working at a hardware store, mixing paint. And I loved it. I feel like I learned how to be really customer centric. I loved learning new technologies, even if they were clunky old machines. And I think that approach still is something that I see in my career today. So I think finding the ways that your stop may not be your best stop or your permanent stop, but contributes to your path is also really important.
Sensational answer. Adrian Carr says, "Love that. I need to hear it's not about getting it perfect, but about getting it done."
To that point, Adrian, one of my mentors, again, my unofficial mentor, she put me on to a phrase called GEPO that helped me. It's good enough, push on. And but it honestly was, she used to do it with her team, right? When they were going through documents, and she's like, "Is it GEPO?" And if it was GEPO, they would let it go, right? They would be like, "We're going to send the email. We're going to push to production." And I think that it's important to realize, yes, we want to get things good, but sometimes we just have to cross it off of our list and move forward. I think that has helped. I hope that it helps you.
So I kind of want to segue there. So as a program manager, do you find yourself often in situations where you have to decide, whether something is efficient versus getting something done by a certain deadline?
Oh, you do. I think that what I like about my job is that I get to say that. I get to say, okay, we are ending the project at this point, and we recognize that we haven't been able to do X, Y, Z, right? Because that to me is a big part of DEI work, right? It's understanding that things are a journey. It's understanding that we've taken this to this one deliverable, but there are others. I want to go back to the questions around skills for program managers. That's one that I think is really important. Your ability to think about not just where your work ends, but what happens afterwards, who inherits it, and what are the implications that could happen or that need to be considered for your work. It's important, right? So for example, that sponsorship program again, what does it mean for those folks that we sponsored, right? What happens after the program? How do we check in on them? How do we continue to provide that support? That's a very PM question, and one that I think will help you as you try to determine what's efficient. Scale, draw that line, right? Okay, if I want to be able to answer this question at the end, what's going to be the most efficient action we can take now or in this part of the process to get there?
And I just want to highlight this comment from Michelle. She said, I'm not going to do all that, but she said, I went from a neurosurgeon to software engineering.
I love it.
So, actually, I want you to revisit this. Black Mamba had asked, what management software do you use? I know you talked a little bit earlier about it. I kind of want you just to revisit that just for the new people who might be listening to the stream.
Of course. So I've used Asana for a couple of projects. I've heard Monday is good. I haven't used it, but some folks really do love it. I think a Google spreadsheet, as underestimated as it can be, is good. And what's actually helped me, I didn't share this before, but what's helped me in trying to get different, as a program manager, the timelines of different things in flight at the same time has actually been a Gantt chart. It's GANT chart. Mostly because I'm a visual person, and I think it's helpful to see what's demanding and what are the multiple things you're carrying at one time. What a Gantt chart displays is really like, what's the task and across what time period will you be doing it? And then you can kind of layer the tasks on one side and the time or the months on another. And you create a chart that gives you a visual around, okay, it looks like these 5 projects are all flowing at different times, and you can kind of see where the volume of things are. I think that as program managers, as DEI professionals, as folks that might be roles of one, Gantt charts are really helpful for you in advocating for your own capacity. There's always more projects than people who can do them. So I've loved being able to have project like Gantt charts for my programs and say, okay, this is what you told me I need to do. Which one's a priority and which one isn't, right? Because the other thing that I think is really important in all of this work is that we find work that has balance, and balance looks different for everyone. It looks different for different seasons, but being able to project and plan what's coming up and what that means in your demand with your manager or with your collaborators is a really helpful tool in being able to set yourself up for success.
So I'm gonna just say, Michael says, wow, dropping so many gems, thank you. So people are hearing what you have to say.
Aw, I'm glad.
So no one's gonna ask. I can only imagine the pushback you get with asking hard questions. How do you deal with that? And better yet, as a second part of this, how do you manage your mental health in this space? Because I can only imagine how demanding it is.
So before this role, I was in DEI, but I focused primarily on recruitment. So if you think of diversity, talking about our representation or who is in the organization, equity being our processes and the effectiveness of our systems, and inclusion being belonging, and how do we talk about identity and embrace that here. I focused a lot on the diversity side of the house. The equity and inclusion side of the house are really heavy, and we've all been through the pandemic in the last few years, and that demand has been a lot. And what I have learned from a lot of mentors in the space, as well as just following the news, is if you're not mindful of your own burnout, of your own capacity, you can really push yourself to the limit in a way that's not helpful for anyone, right? I don't think we win anything when we're so tired that we can't show up the next day. It's a long fight and it's a hard fight. And what that also means is that we have to be able to show up, like take as many steps as you can today so that you can show up tomorrow, right? So my mental health has been a huge priority. I'm going to be really transparent with y'all. Therapy really helped me. I have loved my therapist. And she, when I started this role, actually made it a point to talk about what my mental health plan was. If you know that you get stressed out, that you start looking up and you're like, it's been 4 months since I've taken a vacation, how do you plan for it ahead of time so that you have your downtime? Dominique, this weekend was one of those moments. I booked my time off 3.5, 4 months ago. And yes, I knew I'd be doing something, but I also could have been just in bed, right? And the point is that for me, I knew it's going to be the middle of the summer. If I'm not taking a trip or doing anything, I might just work. And if I do that and don't take care of myself or give myself some downtime, we're going to get to September, October, where our busy season, and I'm going to be tapped, right? Like I need to understand how to like set my own self up for success, right? Like how do I take a break so that I can be and perform the best I can at work? So I think that that's a huge part of how I take care of my mental health. I have really candid conversations with my manager, even when they're uncomfortable. If I can't have that conversation with my manager, I have found other spaces. I've invested in a coach. I've also invested in finding other leaders in the organization to help me frame things. There was a conversation about building leadership skills. I talked about having these like advocates internally. But I want to give a little bit more insight in what that advocacy could look like. For a lot of conversations, for how this leadership skill gets developed, I've just had candid conversations with leaders of how they show up. How have you found that you can how do you work with someone that you disagree with philosophically, right? Like, How do you work with someone who doesn't respond to emails or timeline or difficult conversation, like communicators? Those leaders have been able to, more often than not, give me some skill sets and ideas, but also just reassure me that these challenges are challenges that we all go through. And that it's always hard, right? That you kind of have to figure out what makes sense and what works for you, and go forward with that. So in Chanel, specifically to your question, the pushback and asking the hard questions, I think for me, it's a matter of if I don't do well. It's also a matter of if it's not asked now, is it helpful, right? Like, can this be asked at another time? Is there a better time? But I shared earlier how I tend to, when we end a project, ask about what gets left off. I tend to be the one that awkwardly is like, we solved for X, but we didn't solve for Y and Z, right? And Y and Z are going to one day need to be answered for. And I'm just okay with letting the pieces fall where they may. I'm seeing some folks have to head out, but thanks for being super engaged. No.
It's obvious that you have to head out, but just thank you for the story and advice, especially about taking time off. Your mental health and physical health should be prioritized. And it absolutely should, because at the end of the day, you have one mind, one body. And I'm so happy you're talking about just your mental health and stuff that you do for yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, I think we always think, we always tend to push ourselves to the side for everything else. So you taking the power to say, like, hey, even if I do nothing for this weekend, for these upcoming couple of days, that's my time for me, and that's what I want to do for me. So kudos to you for just having the foresight. I think a lot of us are still learning how to adjust the work-life balance.
It's tough. I think there's seasons for it, without a doubt. I think a lot of conversations from what I've seen with work-life balance has gone from, you've got to figure out what the balance is for you. Truly. Work-life balance for me has at times looked like working from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. because I'm up and I don't have as many meetings, and then taking a 2-hour break in a park and doing my lunch, and then hopping back on meetings from like 12 to 4, right? It's a long day, but if I can leave by 4 o'clock, that to me feels like a reward, right? Or not a reward, but that's when I'm most active. That's when I want to do stuff that's not just about giving to work, but giving to myself. So figuring out that cadence, that rhythm for yourself is really important.
Very important. She's dropping dimes, you guys. Do you have any podcasts or books that you would recommend?
Yes. But if you're asking specifically about project management, that's going to be a little tough. The podcast I would recommend is actually My League Teal. It's not project management. It's actually not even DEI. She is just a great professional. She is an incredible businesswoman. She is an entrepreneur. If you don't know her, she's the founder of Curlbox, and just truly like my mentor in my head, but also like an idol. I think that podcast is helpful because you've seen how someone built something from scratch, and she's giving you all the gems, everything from how do you deal with colleagues you don't like, or a place that you don't know how to work, or work-life balance. A lot. She's helped me really inform my own professional ideas, mostly because she talks to you like your older cousin who's a little rough, but you kind of need to hear it. She's just like, stop crying. Did you do what you needed to do? Because if you didn't, then, and she also gives you the perspective from someone who manages, right? Of what is helpful for her. And it's really helped me. So I hope that one's a good one. The last one, or not the last one, the only other book that I would recommend, I'll actually send some recommendations afterwards. There's a bunch.
So make sure, if you want, can people connect with you on LinkedIn as well?
Absolutely.
So we'll drop that in the box later for y'all to ask her for these recommendations. So Lavetra asks, what type of trends are you noticing in the PM/DEIB space?
That's an awesome question. PMing space, I think that what we're seeing trends of is, actually, I'll bring it, since we're a little bit close to time, I'll talk about intersectionality. And specifically, I talked a little bit about how PMing traditionally felt like a really hard skilled discipline. It was like the PMs have to, like, you've got to be it's a type A sort of role, or gets presented in that way, and can be really not inclusive in that sort of approach, right? I think we've seen a lot of intersections between how do we project or program manage, but make it inclusive? What are the ways and the, how do we expand the mold of what a program manager can look like? And so I think that is very much tied to the DIB sort of space, and giving folks more room to take on roles and in the ways that resonate with them the most.
I like it a lot. Jay Staggett once again asks, what's the next step up after this role?
Jade, I just got here. Like, I just got this from
3 days.
Next for this role, I don't know. I think I will tell you my interest in this role. I see myself being at Handshake for a bit, mostly because I think the work we're doing is really great. And I know personally what I'm most interested in is working actually with a lot more middle managers. I think a lot of DEI initiatives tend to be like early stage employees that advocate for it. And if you get lucky, amazing leaders that want to do it. But it's really managers that help you live it out, right? They're the ones that help you run inclusive meetings. They're the ones that help advocate for equitable practices when it comes to performance reviews. They're the ones that need to be trained on new processes. So I really want to work a lot more with making sure our managers feel like they can run the most inclusive, diverse teams. I think that's going to really help increase my reach with my programming and just set people up for success.
Well, that was a good answer, but I love how you said, like, hey, I'm here at Handshake for a little bit. I just got here, so I'm trying to be here for a little bit, you know. So here's her LinkedIn in case y'all wanted to connect. I'm putting on the screen for everybody to see. And so we only have, a little time left. So I wanted this to be a last little fun question. What made you adopt a dog over the weekend? Let's get into that for a quick second. Let's talk about it. You can because I love her or him. You gotta come
y'all are funny. What made me adopt a dog? I was celebrating my anniversary, and my partner and I really want a dog. We went to a couple of adoption centers, and we're convinced we wanted a puppy. And then this little old lady of 6 years old, she's a gray pit bull. She's so classy, y'all. She just sits here like, oh, baby. Just won our hearts. So we decided to name her Redding after Reading, PA, which is where we got her from. For short, her nickname is Red, and she sleeps all day when she's not ripping and running, and she's truly stolen my heart in 3 days.
I love how this was just impromptu. You were just like, you know what? We want a puppy, and then she was just waiting there.
I will say we were in the market we were looking for a puppy for a while, or a dog for a while. But I think if you haven't gotten it, I think you go to the right places at the right times. I think whether you're in a role right now where you're like, there's something there for you, I truly do believe it. So thanks for spending the time with me today. Thanks for, I hope that this is something or an opportunity for you on your path to going somewhere or learning something new. And if there's anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Wow, she took my job from me because I was going to end it, but she said, you know what, I got you. Let me handle this for you real quick.
I got some skills. I knew. I was like, time is coming up.
And guess what? You know what that means? That goes directly into our program and project because she is time-oriented and time managing. So guess what? That's another skill for y'all to pick up on. But thank you so much, Syndhia. I'm so happy that, you did this with us. So happy that we got to see your face again. So happy that you're in the community. Tomorrow we have associate marketing, brand marketing, I should say. And I can't wait for y'all to see that session. But thank you all for joining us. I want to be cautious of the time. And I hope y'all all have a wonderful evening.
Bye, y'all.